What's up? Good morning and War Eagle War Report family. You got Ike Jones. We are here. Another morning drop. Johni Broome makes it official. He's coming back for another year. And you know we got to talk about it right here on the War Report. Y'all know how we do. War Report style. Let's drop it on them.
You are now listening to the War Report. Drop.
Morning drop time. It is May 30th, Tuesday. Johni Broome back to the plains, baby. Oh, weep, you poor SEC teams. Weep. Feels good, man. It feels good. This is going to be a very good roster next year. We've got scoring. We've got an interior presence. You guys know what you need to be doing right now. You need to be sharing this video. You need to be making sure that other people are a part of the content in the conversation. Make sure that you use the hashtag and add us so we know that you shared it. Like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're listening to this on podcast, man, make sure that you all save the podcast so you know when we're dropping the new pods. And we appreciate everybody who continues to rock with us. But be Will in here this morning talking a little college basketball. Johni Broome finally made the decision. It's time to come back. Unfinished business. How we feeling?
I was never worried for a second. I knew he was coming back. I said, I was worried. I was worried he was going. I don't know what all factored into his decision.
Yeah.
I would expect that something like, hey, I can stay in the draft, you guys. Y'all got something for me on the Victory. Do you have something for me? And my guess is on the Victory was like, here, please stay. And it worked. And I'm glad that whatever they worked out was sufficient for him to stay for another year. This solves, I can't say it completely solves the Biggs piece, right? Because again, you can't, he's not going to be Walker Kessler and Johni Broome, which is what we missed a lot of Walker Kessler's presence the year before with what he was able to do, like erasing shot attempts constantly in the paint. Johni Broome was not that defender. We wanted another big to go with Johni Broome, so Johni Broome could really be the scorer down low that he is.
Mm-hmm.
We still don't have that big.
Right.
We still don't have that big. But what we got was a lot of height at 2, 3, and 4. Jalen Williams, I don't think he is like declared, but I think it's expected that he's coming back.
Yeah, I don't think there's any rumblings or thoughts that Jalen is not returning. Still on the roster on the website. I think Coach Pearl has been speaking as if Jalen is returning, even though there's been no formal announcement of it. I think it's just kind of an understood at this point in time. Jay will be back on the Plains this year.
Right. So what we look like now is a much bigger team everywhere. Really 1 through 4 were a bigger team. Aiden Holloway, I think he's a little taller than Wendell was. So we're bigger everywhere. We have our best scorer back. We've got at least 2 additional guys who are dynamic scorers in Denver Jones and Aiden Holloway. It looks like we are now ready for a competitive SEC, and we can put points on the board. Now, defensively will not be the question. Defense will be the question.
Yeah,
Bruce
will
will have to get those guys into shape. But
let's take a look at the roster while you're talking, though.
Good.
But here's the roster as it currently stands, so you can see just kind of where we are as far as size is concerned. To your point, we've upgraded in the size in the backcourt. Trey Donaldson and Aiden Holloway, both over 6 feet tall. That I don't remember the last time that Auburn had 2 point guards that they could run in at any time that were over 6 feet tall, right? Like it's been a while. Denver Jones at 6'4", definitely a size upgrade at the 2 guard. And you've got, the post players or your front court here between, the returning guys. And I don't mean to skip over Katie Johnson in the backcourt, but definitely going to be an asset there. But post or front court guys, Chris Moore, Johni Broome, Dylan Caldwell, Jalen Williams, Chaney Johnson, Chad Baker-Mazara, and even Leor Berman, 6'4" and up, right?
Mm-hmm.
From all those guys, 6'4" and up, we've got more height across the board, which is something that has been plaguing Auburn. I'll let you continue your point about the defense, though, because looking at this, is this a defensive stopping squad, in your opinion?
So based on what I know from the guys who were here, KD is a pest of a defender. He is a guy who will get steals, who will pressure the ball handler. Of course, that has value. Leo Berman could get lost defending some more athletic guys.
Hmm.
He could get left behind at times, and that's a bit of a concern. We were without a staunch. Well, I'll take that back. Flanagan was a very good perimeter defender.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at this roster and I'm like, okay, which guy is a dynamic two guards coming down the court, and we got our best defender on him? Who is that guy? I don't know who that guy is at present. I don't know what type of defender Denver Jones is. I don't know what type of defender Baker-Mazara is. I don't know what type of defender Chaney Johnson is. I have no idea. I know these guys are 6'4" to 6'7". I know they have the length to be great defenders. I don't know if they have that mentality, that defensive effort. That is what I question right now. That's what I question now. Who is our perimeter defender? Who's our lockdown guy? Hopefully we have more than one of them. KD being a pest at the one or the two, whichever he's on the floor for, great, but he's not even going to be on the floor that much. We don't think KD is going to start over Aiden Holloway or Trey Donaldson necessarily.
No.
So if KD's coming off the bench, if he's our sixth man of the year type guy, come in, get his hot, score some points, be aggressive. Okay, who is defending the other team's best guy and their ball handler? I don't know. That's a concern of mine. We'll just have to let the season get going and see what Bruce Pearl's going to do with that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting when we start getting into how this team is going to defend, right? Last year we saw Coach Pearl do something a lot different, which he went to more zone last year than he has been typically. Pressed a lot less last year. Like, we weren't picking up full court and pressing teams, or at least speeding up the pace of play. I do think that we get back into more pace this season. But this was something that I talked about with the pending return of Johni Broome, is to whether or not it benefits him to have up-tempo basketball be the flavor of Auburn, right? He is a post player. They don't typically flourish in an up and down the floor type of thing because they need the post touches. But what Johni does allow you to do is slow it down when you need to, right? If you're up big and you want to just be able to milk the clock for possessions, Johni Broome is the guy you want to go to. Or you're not up big. Maybe it's just a 2 or 3 possession game, but you want to shrink the remainder of the game and not have it be an up and down pace. All right, cool. We're just going to work through Johni for the rest of this game. If he's not in foul trouble, we're just going to go down to the post and we're going to make sure that we're not taking shots before there's 10 seconds left on the shot clock, right? So we're just going to do whatever we need to get to Johni. It does allow you to be a little bit different in the way that you can approach games and win basketball games in very different ways. But I do wonder what the style of play of this team is going to be offensively. And then to the pivot point that we were talking about defensively is how we're going to play defensively, because what had been the hallmark of that team with Walker Kessler and what those guards had been accustomed to doing is, all right, we're just going to funnel everything to our shot blocker. Everything's going to run through the post defensively. We're going to play super aggressive out high, run you off the 3-point line, but you've got a wall behind you that you have to figure out how to navigate.
Right.
I don't know that Johni Broome, well, he hasn't shown to be that guy yet. Are we going to be able to do that? Or are they going to change philosophically how they want to approach defense and play people more straight up and live with whatever happens out there on the perimeter?
Right.
It's going to be an interesting proposition to see what happens. I, from very limited tape of Aiden Holloway, don't see him as a lockdown defensive guy out top. Trey Donaldson, I think, has the ability to be that kind of guy. He's got a tenacious attitude towards it. Denver Jones has had moments in some of the film that I've watched. This might be a good week for me to drop some basketball film. I told you I've been teasing some basketball film. I got a lot of it available. Maybe we'll get into some basketball this week on Watch the Film. You already talked about KD out top. Chris Moore is definitely a guy that you can go and put on a primary ball handler. Let him agitate somebody. But I think that's where it stops.
Yeah.
Right. It's really KD, Trey, and maybe Chris Moore. I don't know where else we're going to get perimeter defense that's going to be effective against their best ball handler. And so it's going to have to be a team effort. It's going to be interesting to see philosophically how they approach this season defensively, whether or not we're going to be doing a lot of zone, more man, all that kind of thing.
Yeah. And so now I'm worried because the three guys you said who I think we can trust to play solid defense individually, being Trey Donaldson, KD Johnson, and Chris Moore, there's a chance that not one of those guys could be starting. Now, I don't think
No.
none of them will be.
No, none of them will start. And I am, if I were a betting man, I would bet against it.
Right. So what our starting lineup could potentially be: Aiden Holloway, bucket getter, driving to the basket and shooting; Denver Jones, bucket getter, big shot maker. We've got Baker Mazzara, long guy, 3-point sniper. We've got Jalen Williams, you would expect at the 4. I don't know that for sure, but expecting.
Yeah,
Johni Broome
I
at the
don't see
5.
anybody else that's on this team that would usurp him at the 4 right now.
Right. So which one of those guys do you go, oh, you're not getting past him?
Yeah.
I'm the word about that. And with that lineup I just said, who's the guy who's in there just deboing folks for rebounds?
Yeah, Johni is the only like pure rebounder that's on that. I mean, Denver Jones can get in there and crash boards a little bit. Baker Mazzara can probably do a little bit. He's a little slight of frame, but I do like his length and being able to go and crash the glass. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know that we have solidified what we're going to do defensively or on the glass. And that's probably the biggest problem. We at least have the length now, right? So size isn't going to be the issue as far as being taller players in there being able to compete on the boards.
Right.
But physicality is a different thing.
Right.
And I don't know that we have this team seems a little more finesse, if we're going to be honest, right? Like a high tempo, but more finesse. And you can't have physicality from just one guy. I do think that Johni Broome has the potential to be a very physical player, but physicality is a team mentality, not just one guy. Now, one guy can ratchet up that physicality or that mentality, but they can't make up for everybody else not being that. So it will be interesting. I do think Chaney Johnson coming off the bench. I think our bench, though, has a lot of physicality.
Yes. I think our bench could bully some people for sure. Yeah, I see that. And make it, maybe it'll be a little harder for them to get a bucket, which is why I think I really like the idea of a KD coming off the bench with that unit. Now y'all can hustle, y'all can get turnovers, get into the open court, get some easy buckets from defense turning into offense. And if you just need a bucket in the half court, let KD Johnson do some cooking, which he showed more control and more focus the second half of last year, being that off the bench guy. But can we manufacture offense with our second unit? I do not know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that with that second unit, you do allow the opportunity for a guy like KD to be your primary scorer, though, right? If he's going to be the primary scorer off of that, you don't have to worry about where your shots are coming from. The question for KD is, can he continue to be in facilitative mode, right? Like, can he be a primary focus offensively, but still make other players better? Because if it's just, all right, well, we know KD ain't going to pass the ball, just play good defense on him, and it's going to either be a shot or a turnover, right? That's a question for that second unit, because to your point, there aren't really other scorers out there. But depending on how the rotations are going to go, you could have a secondary scorer out there with him at all times, the way that this team is put together. And Trey Donaldson, again, another underrated portion. I said earlier that if I were a betting person, I wouldn't bet that any of those guys to start. Trey Donaldson would be the only one that I think could potentially start, not because Aiden Holloway's not talented, but just because I don't know experience-wise whether or not he's ready to start game one. But that could all change by the time we get to conference play and all those sorts of things. But here's the question that I have without seeing this team play a single game, because this is something we didn't do last year before the season, and I think it is going to be a good opportunity to make some preseason predictions based upon what we know as the roster stands today. What we didn't do last season, but what I would have said last season is we probably have a tournament team, but probably not going to go very far in the tournament, right? As this roster is constructed today, what do you think should be the realistic expectations for this roster? Like, if we don't at least blah, then this season didn't come together the way it should, based upon the talent, the experience, all of the things that we have with this current Auburn basketball roster.
I know that a Bruce squad is going to get better. They're going to compete in the regular season. And I don't expect there to be so much time getting people acclimated as it took this past season.
Okay.
Wendell starting was new. Broome on the squad was new. Of course, Trayor never got into the rotation. Chance never got into the rotation. We had guys that we were counting on that didn't get in. The difference between that squad and this squad is Johni Broome's here. He knows the deal already. You've got a bunch of guys who are here from their last stops who are ready to prove themselves. They are freshmen who are waiting in the cooker, who have to get acclimated to the college game. The only one is Aiden Holloway, and he looks more prepared to score on the college level than anybody we had coming in last year. I think it's a more ready-made roster because so many guys are experienced, and for that reason, I expect them to find themselves a little sooner. It took us a week or two of SEC play before we kind of started to round into form. I think by the time we hit SEC play, we'll probably be raring to go. A little bit like what we looked in the Jabari and Kessler season. Not that we'll be that good, but we'll find ourselves sooner on that schedule more than the schedule in 22-23. So with that being said, I think that gives us a really good chance to compete for the regular season title because we will be more prepared. We'll be more ready when SEC play starts. So I expect top 3 in the SEC.
Okay.
I expect a worst case 5 seed in the tournament, in the SEC, not the SEC tournament, the NCAA tournament. I see Chris just said the same thing. Top 5 seed in whatever bracket we're in. Sweet 16.
Okay.
I expect Sweet 16. The only reason I can't say for sure, hey, we're going to get back to Sweet 16, we know that we could have an issue rebounding or defending, and one bad matchup, and you getting got. So I expect a lot out of Bruce. I think Bruce is a fantastic coach. So I don't expect our deficiencies at the season's beginning to be our same weaknesses at the season's end. If I'm going just by what I see, I have not seen that progression. I have not seen how they improve. I am expecting Sweet 16 and a top 3 SEC finish out of this team.
Okay. All right. I think that's fair. I think, I was thinking probably similarly. The only reason I might put us in the Elite 8 is just because of, I think Coach Bruce Pearl has done a really good job of getting teams to overperform expectations. The only team I think that underperformed expectations is that Jabari Kessler team. Like you couldn't have told me that we would have made a round of 32 exit with that team.
Right.
But outside of that team, I think every other Coach Bruce Pearl coached team has exceeded whatever the expectations were for that team. Yeah. Even as disappointing as last year's team might have been to some Auburn fans, that team overperformed. Yeah. Like it wasn't a team that was built to be able to do a whole bunch of stuff, and they made a lot of noise in some scenarios where they probably shouldn't have. Making the tournament even was looking shaky there for a minute.
Right.
So all right, but definitely want to hear what you all have to say on the subject. We'll go to the comments here in just a moment. But before we do that, got to make sure we shout out the sponsor of the morning drop, which is Rogue Shop, rogueshop.com. Using code RAPPORT, you can get a little something off of your purchase. Rogue Shop is America's #1 online dispensary. Head there for all of your herbal supplement needs. They have stress relief. They've got things that can help you sleep, things that help with anxiety, pain, any of those things happening right now. You're probably in a good mood today if you're an Auburn basketball fan, but hey, we know baseball is not done yet, and there is some anxiety that's going to be happening right now for Auburn fans as we get into hosting this weekend. Yes, I'm still high on that a little bit, but let's get to the comment section right now and see what everybody's talking about in terms of Johni Broome returning to Auburn basketball for one more go at it. Before I do that, Coach Pearl tweeted about this, right? And he said that he, in his talks with people around the league, he didn't say this specifically, but I'm assuming they get scouting on where they feel like players are going to land. The intel that he got from people around the NBA, plus what was coming from the Broome camp, they thought that Johni Broome could sneak into the second round of the draft, definitely would have gotten a 2-way contract, according to a lot of sources. And he still made the decision to come back and play his way into the first round of the NBA draft. Question for you, B. Will, before we get to the comments. Do you think that with a good season, Johni Broome could be a first-round NBA draft pick?
Tell me what a good season looks like.
Let's say he is first team All SEC, right? Last year he was
Mhm.
second team All SEC,
Mhm.
in contention for Player of the Year in the conference, and the team, whatever statistics round out for that, right? So let's just say he's a double guy statistically,
Like
with
he's a 22 in 10.5 rebounds guy.
something like that. Yeah,
Okay.
above 20, above, close, hovering around 11 rebounds per game, 2 or 3 shot blocks per game kind of guy. And then his assist to turnover ratio is like 2 to 1, right?
Okay.
But then he also takes this team into the Sweet 16 as being the offensive guy for that team. Is
Right.
that a first round draft pick? Because we're talking about what we feel like the ceiling of this team is, right? So
Yeah.
if we put all of those things together and Johni Broome is the guy on that squad, is he a first round draft pick?
If this was 10 years ago, I would tell you yes. Unfortunately for him, who's going to be in front of him are guys who didn't even go to college. They're in the G League right now.
Right.
They're going to the G League instead. Those are guys who are going to be getting looked at ahead of any college player, because if you were good enough to go to the G League initially out of high school, then they've got their eye on you already. International guys. The number one pick this year is going to be a guy who's never stepped foot he's been in the US obviously, but he's never played ball
on a
here.
league here. Yeah.
Right. So now there are so many prospects. The game's worldwide. Prospects are worldwide. Getting into the first round means you have to supersede what people view the potential of all these other players being. And again, what Broome's limitations are now he could actually, if he improves that outside shot, they give him the opportunity to play a 5, spread it out more with him on the floor, show that he can be diverse. He doesn't just have to be in the paint with the ball in his hands with his back to the basket. That's what this year gives him the chance to prove, that he can be valuable outside of his most natural role. And if he can do that with those numbers, I say yes, he can sneak into the first round of the draft. If we build around him doing what he does best, which is down low in the paint, being bigger and stronger than some college guys who are playing the 4 and the 5, I don't think that's enough. If that's what he's going to do it and be great at it, he can get those numbers. But I don't think that gets him into the league in the first round. If he wants to be a first round pick, hopefully that Bruce and his staff are going to give him the opportunity to hit some of those threes, to play on the perimeter a little bit, to show a little more, some better acuity with passing out of the double team when it comes from the paint. Those things will get him first round drafted. If he's just going to come back and be the best version of what he's already been, I think he will be a second round prospect then.
Yeah. I mean, I think I agree with everything that you just said. The one of two things really needs to happen. He either needs to improve his percentage on 15 feet and beyond, or he needs to be a phenomenal playmaking big, right? Like if he's going to play from the post, we talk about this with Joker, right? Like he's not this most athletic guy. He's not really dominating physically over people, and he doesn't really shoot a lot of threes. He can shoot the three. He can step out and shoot. He's not really a big 3-point shooter. What makes him elite is his ability to make other players around him better. If Johni Broome can become that kind of guy, then he can be a prospect for the first round. Or again, he's going to have to be a better shooter. If you're going to be a scorer, rebounder guy, you need to be able to hit open jump shots. Doesn't have to be a 3-pointer, right? But it does need to be 15 and beyond, right? Like it needs to be something that allows more spacing so that you can play in the high post. They can get you the ball away from the basket, handle the ball a little bit maybe, or knock down that perimeter shot. I think those things would allow him to be, because we already know he can go dominate physically down low. He did that in the SEC. He did that when he played in these G League camps, all those things. He looked physically dominant against other guys, but the ability to step out a little bit more, that's what's going to put him into the first round.
For sure.
All right, now let's go to these comments here. James Barnett gets us kicked off and says, fellas, is this a top 3 is this team top 3 in the SEC? I think we've answered that already. I believe so. Right now that, looking at where we are, so I mean, it's going to be interesting to see, the preseason rankings that come out. Like Auburn is always ranked like 5th or 6th in those, but I mean, let's realistically look at what we know about some of the other teams in the SEC. as far as who's returning, right? Like they may have some studs that we don't know about, but as far as returning productivity to teams, nobody has a really strong returning roster except maybe Kentucky's got a couple of pieces there and they're going to bring in a bunch of studs behind them. So Kentucky's going to be super talented for sure. Bama lost the vast majority of their scoring and productivity from last year between the transfer portal and the NBA. They're gone. Florida wasn't doing so well with what they had, and they lost a good bit in the offseason.
Right.
Arkansas lost a lot of productivity from that team from last year. Still going to be talented. Again, I'm not saying all of these teams will still have a ton of talent. I'm talking about what we know about productivity returning, and teams that played well last year. Vanderbilt lost a lot last year off of last year's team. Who else? Missouri lost a ton off of that team from last year. I don't think Kobe Brown's made a decision yet as to whether or not he's returning or anything like that. And that's going to be a big situation there for that Missouri team. What other teams were actually decent in, like Mississippi State made a kind of sort of run, but I don't know that they've got anything over there. Ole Miss is probably going to be a team that will make an emergence next season as far as a huge flip from what they had the previous year to next year. Who am I missing? South Carolina, they lost their major threat that they had on that team. Yeah, I just don't know. I mean, so yes, I think Auburn can be a top.
I don't know who A&M has coming back.
I think, that's a good question. I don't know about A&M. But okay, still, I would put us in the top 3. I don't know that LSU got markedly better this off season. So I think top 3 is potentially where this team should land.
I think Kentucky, Arkansas are what I would think are the best competition, just because Musselman brought in everybody in the transfer portal
right
for a workout. Everybody. It didn't matter what position you played or where you came from. So Musselman's a good coach. He's a good coach. I don't think he's an overrated. He's not a John Calipari where he's just living off the hype and gets every 5-star ever. He's a good coach. Of course, I think Ty Golden at Florida's a good coach. I think Buzz at A&M is a good coach. We've got good coaches. Can their teams, their rosters be built to play the style that the coaches excel at, want to play? And we don't know enough of. Everybody's bringing in so much turnover, transfer portal, early exits for the NBA. It's going to be really hard to say who's what, but I expect Kentucky and Arkansas to be our biggest competition in the top 3.
Yeah. Can't disagree with that. Dallas Schwartz jumps in and says, if Auburn doesn't make the Elite 8 minimum without being an injury without it being an injury issue, then this year was for naught.
See this again. Now because of the nature of the NCAA tournament, which we talked about yesterday, it's really hard for me to say that a season is a bust if you don't get really hot and beat round of 64, round of 32, 16. And 8. So 3 of the best top 50 teams in the country, you have to beat them in a row. The first 2 you got to beat, and of course, and you get to skip a day every other day. That's tough. It's tough for me to put success of a season on Elite 8 because some of it I think is just dumb luck. At some point in that season, you win that many games in a row. I don't know if you can bottle that, but man, if you can, and then if there's a coach who you're telling me it's just skill, being able to coach a team to play their best for that long, hey man, then that's an elite skill. I think it's partially luck, and that's why it's really hard for me to put this burden of Elite 8 or bust. That's really hard for me to say. I think 16 is a formidable. That's a good accomplishment. That's job well done, fellas. We made it to the second weekend. That's really all I want for my team. Make it to the second weekend. 8 would be great. I think we have the talent to get to 8. But the tournament's it's another monster all by itself.
For sure. John Brandon jumps in and said there should not be a problem scoring points on this Auburn team coming up next season.
Should not be.
Listen, we got scoring everywhere. And this is a thing, and this is echoed by a lot of commentators in regards to basketball in general, but specifically college basketball. Teams that play well deep into the tournament have good guard play. Yeah. Your guards control the pace of the game. They are shot creators and shot makers in key moments, decision making, all of those things. The guards control basketball right now, right? I mean, they've always to a degree controlled it, but it's so different because guards score so much more in this version of college basketball. Having good post presence is not the oh man, they've got this dominant, the days where Patrick Ewing is taking Georgetown to the finals is not
Right.
a thing anymore, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you got a good combination of those things, then you're a really hard team, which is why I like this Auburn roster so much offensively. But is a guy, we've got a lot of inexperience in our backcourt, right? Trey
Mhm.
Donaldson was not a full-time starter last year. Aiden Holloway hasn't played a single minute of college basketball. And Denver Jones, though an older player, has not played at this level as far as day in and day out, the same type of athleticism. Again, basketball's a little different because if you're playing, at this, if you have the ability to make the round of 64 tournament as a team, which FIU could have, then you are playing against a lot of athletic guards at any level. It's just
Right.
there's size differences and a physicality difference when you get into the SEC. But
For sure.
KD Johnson's really the only guy that's returning that has any tournament experience. But he's, in my opinion, always the wild card. He's always the guy where he's the one, if you get into trouble in the round of 32, you're like, KD, go get us a bucket. And
Yeah.
he's been there to do that for 2
Yeah.
years now
Yeah.
in the tournament play, SEC and NCAA. Didn't do so well the first year in tournament stuff, but I do like KD's wild factor to be able to do that. I like that we have guys that we can go to at a lot of different spots to be able to just give it to them, go get us a bucket. I do agree with this statement. Scoring should not be a problem with this team.
Should not be.
Auburn dad with a big time dad joke here. I'm glad Broome is back. Now we can sweep away the competition. Boom.
Ba-doom.
Yeah, we needed some sound effects
Thanks,
for that
Auburn
one right
dad.
there. Chris Sanders jumps in and says, I'm not comfortable calling this team an Elite Eight appearance or bust before the season. We can make that determination after games have been played.
Right.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
that's fair to do that. I think it's also fair to make projections prior to. So if you're saying before the season, I'm not comfortable going to Elite Eight, Sweet 16, I think that's a super fair statement to make. There are a lot of things that still need to get sorted out, as we've said before. Defensively, rebounding being the utmost of importance. I don't think scoring is not going to be an issue, but hear me out when I say figuring out how to keep all of these scorers fed is going to be an issue. They're going to where Johni Broome, I won't say struggled, where this team struggled around Johni, specifically early in the season, was not figuring out how to get him the ball in scoring opportunities consistently enough. I think Johni Broome could have scored way more last year early in the season if we had just figured out giving the ball in the post with more than 8 seconds left on the shot clock.
Right. We really need to not only feature him, but for the offense to work best, we probably need to work through him and give him the opportunity to be a better passer in the post. We've got Denver, who can be a great spot-up shooter. We got Baker Mazar, who can be a great spot-up shooter. Aiden Holloway is a great shooter in any fashion. Listen, we should have some guys littered around the perimeter who can say, hey, man, listen, I'm here. You do your work down there. And if you don't like what you got, I got it. And actually be able to make teams pay for having to collapse on Broome. And Broome should be able to make teams pay for playing him one-on-one in the post. This should be easy. Should be. But, I mean, how many times do things work out exactly like you expect?
Right. Not often. Chris Stiffs jumps in and says, we have an older team, a lot of experienced guys, a lot of experience on this team for sure. I mean, when I'm looking at this roster, I'm seeing junior, senior, junior, grad student, junior. Like, it's just, there's not a lot of underclassmen on this team, which means next year's team has zero experience absent of transfer portal people coming in, right? Like, this is a complete, we talk about the overhaul of this roster for this year as far as the backcourt. I mean, if Aiden Holloway is the guy that people think he is, he might not even be back next year. Right. Trey Donaldson, if he doesn't get the right kind of minutes that he wants, or he has a spectacular season, who knows if he's going to return? KD is going to be gone. Chris Moore is graduating. Johni Broome definitely will not return if he has a good season. Dylan Caldwell's going to be gone. Jalen Williams gone. Chaney Johnson will probably be here. Baker Mazar maybe, unless if he has a phenomenal season, he might test the NBA waters. Lior Berman gone. Right, like it will be a completely new team after this season, and they're going to be starting all the way over, all the way. Like, there might be 2 players returning from that scene.
Man, they got to win it all this year. We need to get up. We need to get up.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens after this season. Corey Weber thinks Sweet 16. So does the Walker Show says Sweet 16. James Barnett says he's predicting Final Four based upon the potential of this team.
It's not impossible. I mean, did anybody see FAU in the Final Four before last year? It could happen.
Let's see. Shawnee Demand Entertainment says my expectation for the Sweet 16 getting to the Elite 8 would be a bonus.
That's how I feel about it. That's how I feel about it too. Yeah.
And then John Brandon says that B. Will would rather be talking about the NBA right now.
Hey man, listen, I like what's happening to my team. The NBA is great, but Auburn is my team. I like talking about my team. I'm glad to be talking about the Tigers today. But if you want to have a conversation about the NBA and what's happened, it was a great game last night. We talk about that on Twitter.
All right, man, that's it. We're going to finish the conversation with that. We want to hear your thoughts based on paper alone, right? We know there's a lot of things that have to be sorted out. Where do you think that this Auburn team should go? What are your expectations based upon how this roster is currently constructed? Throw all of that down there in the comment section. We want to hear from you. As always, this is brought to you by Rogue Shop. Head over to rogueshop.com. Use code rapport now to get your 15% off, and we appreciate you heading over there. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, tell a friend to tell a friend that the War Report is the best out there. We're out of here. We'll be back at you all tomorrow morning with another drop. Until then, and as always, War Eagle, peace.
Peace.